Cheering is real. Okay, great, guys. So we are going to start back at the top where we're talking about the bracket. Now, thank you so much for sitting through all these technical difficulties. I am Neon, and I am joined today by Lights Out Ace. How are you doing, friend?
I am doing great.
You're doing great. Happy to be through the technical difficulties for the time being.
Oh yeah, I'm prepared. I got my water bottle. I got my snacks. It's gonna be a fun day.
It is going to be a fun day. So, we're going to pull up the bracket on screen. Now, this is a slightly confusing bracket for those who haven't had a chance to look at it. So let's kind of talk through what's going on. So usually we're used to 16-player brackets, which will allow for very clear, a single elimination style. But we're using 12 players in a double elimination style. So can you kind of explain what's happening here?
Yeah, so the 4 players who won weekly tournaments get a win straight out of the bat. They get to skip right into round 2 of winners. And round 1 has the rest of the points-based qualifiers, second place finishers, and last chance qualifier winners. So the winners of round 1 will move up to round 2, and the losers will go back into losers round 1. And then the losers of round 2 will then go and play against the losers of round 1 in the bottom of the losers bracket.
Okay. And then, so our players that we are seeing in the first round, we have Rekenner versus Linyvine. We have Comp versus Shed, Rhino versus Thundershot, Rewind versus Loco Pojo. And then they'll be joining Crispa, Babam, Toth, and Unearthly in the second round. But if you lose once, you're not out yet. So the way that a double elimination bracket works is that if you lose in the winner's bracket, you fall into the loser's bracket. And then from there, you have to lose again, and in order to fall out of the tournament. And when you fall out of the winner's bracket, you kind of fall into the corresponding. Since if Crispa loses in round 2, he will be falling into the loser's bracket round 2 and have to face the winner of whoever won the previous round of the loser's bracket. So that gives you a bit of an overview of kind of what's going to be happening here. But we are going to be starting with Rekenner versus Linyvine.
Linyvine.
Sorry? Linyvine, yes. I'm not going to get that
Linyvine
right all day long. I apologize because I'm a bad person. But let's take a look at some deck lists as soon as we get a chance. Pulling those up here. I'm not actually seeing it in the Hangout. I might have to restart my Hangout, which is, I'm not sure what's going on here. So maybe you can talk for a little bit, Ace.
All right, so our first round that we're going to show on stream here is going to be Rekenner, who prefers to be called Rek, versus Linyvine, the runner-up in the last chance qualifier yesterday. And we're going to look at Linyvine's deck list here first. He's running a new version of traditional Armory. Want to tell us a little bit about the Armory deck?
Okay, so the Armory deck I would describe as a board control deck that focuses on weapon synergies. So you have these smaller creatures in the form of Rekenner Artisan and Armorsmith that help buff up your weapons. And then you have just a ton of weapons of Sword of Icarias. You have Starsealed Die Shows and Auric Runehammers, as well as the Sword of the Sky King. And that you use these to both control your opponent's threats and also generate card advantage and eventually kill your opponent. You often also are playing something like Ikari the Liberated to be a big closer against control decks, as well as Rise to the Challenge to find whatever tool you need for a given spot, Smuggler's Stash to generate a ton of card advantage, and basically this all comes together to be a deck with a very powerful engine, especially if you're playing Treasury Gate, as you see 2 copies of it in this list.
Yeah, the deck really wants to grind out 2-for-1 advantages using its weapons, using Rekenner Artisan to buff them up in the deck, Armorsmith to buff them up once they're in play, and then Treasury Gate to protect them so they can't be attacked down. If you can get a couple 2-for-1s with your weapons, and then Smuggler stash it all back, you're really rolling.
Now, there are a few interesting things to note about this list. This is a much heavier Shadow build than what I've seen before. So we see 4 copies of Scheme, which has been moved from Primal into Shadow and adjusted slightly, which is an interesting addition to the deck. I haven't personally seen that in use before, but it seems useful. And we also have Deathstrike, 3 copies of it in the main deck, which is very rare for Armory list that I saw pre-patch.
Yeah, traditionally the deck was mostly just Fire and Justice, but with Scheme being moved to Shadow with the release of the open beta, you no longer need to splash an extra color for card selection. I know that Babam, one of our other invitational players, was a staunch proponent of splashing Primal into Armory for Wisdom of the Elders and Push Onward, the predecessor to Scheme. And now you don't even need to hurt your power base very much to use that card.
Now, it's also important to talk about the sideboard. Didn't talk about this in the bracket, so it's useful for those of you who may not be familiar with the sideboarding, game plan. If you're coming from Hearthstone or some other game, for example, and not Magic, what happens is this is a best of 3 match, where the first game is played with the 75 cards that you see, normally, but then after game 1, you get a chance to change out some of your cards in your main deck with your sideboarded cards to better tune your deck to combat whatever it is that you're facing. So we would look at some of the tools that he has in his sideboard, such as Protect and Ruin, and these are really good in specific matchups.
Yeah, Protect can be used to give a unit you control or you, the player, an Aegis, which protects you from one enemy effect. So in this case, generally, since your deck is all weapons, your opponent is going to sideboard in a bunch of stuff that destroys attachments like your weapons. And then you board in Protect to counter this. When they try to decay or ruin your weapons, you can protect yourself and keep your weapon around.
Now, one thing that I find interesting about this particular list is that you see no copies of Valkyrie Enforcer and only one copy of Steward of the Past in the sideboard. So, really not very resilient against some sort of void recursion type strategy or something that really has very powerful units that need to be silenced. That's not what we're seeing in this particular matchup, but that might come up later in the bracket because we do have some lists that are taking advantage of those sorts of synergies.
Yeah, Linyvine's plan against recurring units or void strategies is just to hit them with a weapon as hard and fast as he can.
Yeah, just hit them harder, teach them a lesson. So how about we then take a look at Rekenner's list, transition over to that, and get a chance to get a sense of what the matchup will be like. So so Rek's list is a Feln control list, similar to something that you've written about, right?
Oh, I love Feln control. Rek's particular list is a little metagamed for the tournament. It doesn't have as many small unit removal spells. It's only running 1 Permafrost. It doesn't have any copies of Plague in the main deck. Instead, it's running more heavy, or has 1 copy of Plague only. It's running more heavy impact cards like Azendel's Gift and Vara.
Yeah, those are some heavy hitters. Now, this deck does have some particular tools against Armory, such as 2 Lightning Strikes and the Azendel's Gift, which is really powerful in the matchup. But do you think that this matchup, which side would you rather be playing today?
Well, game 1, I would definitely rather be on the Armory side. Feln doesn't have a lot of units to block the relic weapons, and it doesn't have much relic weapon removal main deck. Just the 2 Lightning Strikes and the 1 Cabal Countess, really. So then it's going to have to really go hard after sideboard with Sabotage, discard the weapons while they're still in hand, Lightning Strikes if they get into play, Recurring Nightmare to attack them from hand, a hard to remove unit, and even Rain of Frogs.
Yeah, Rain of Frogs can definitely be frustrating if you're on the Armory side. But I would have to agree. But we'll see if Rekenner can make things happen. So just waiting for updates from my producer as to what's going to be happening with the matchup. Because I'm feeling pretty ready here, but we can continue talking about what's happening. Okay, we're starting in just a few minutes.
Yeah, why don't we give a quick overview of the other round 1 matches? Just kind of talk about the players here.
Okay, so we have Comp versus Shed. So what's that matchup going to be?
So this is a Stone Scar Mirror, but it's 2 very different Fire Shadow decks. Comp is playing a Stone Scar mid-range deck based around a lot of very powerful units. It's got everything all the way up to Umbran Reaper and Infernal Tyrant, like big heavy hitters that win the game by themselves if left unchecked. Whereas Shed is playing a lower to the ground Stone Scar Burn variant with Flame Blast and Obliterate, aiming to get some early damage in and then end his opponent with a bunch of huge burn spells to the face.
Yeah, so that list of the Stone Scar Burn is something that I think a lot of people have been talking about in Discord or in Reddit, and is a very, very popular deck on ladder right now, especially in Master. And I'm like personally a big proponent of the deck, and I'm not sure how it's positioned in this particular matchup though. Do you have any sense of that?
Well, Kampf has a lot of life gain, health gain. He has 4 Umber Reapers and 4 Infernal Tyrants. And if those Infernal Tyrants aren't killed right away, he's going to be able to gain so much health that all the Flame Blasts and Obliterates in the world won't be able to kill him.
And we do see a little sprinkle of Countess in here as well, which is always nice to see in his list. What are the other matchups that we're going to be seeing? Sir Rhino versus Thundershot.
So Sir Rhino is playing a Fire Shadow Time Vault deck. So it's based on the new card, Vault of the Praxis, which when you play your second unit in a turn, lets you draw a card. So in order to take advantage of this, it uses a lot of cards that summon multiple units using only one card, such as Grenadin Drone and Assembly Line.
Now, he's going to be facing up against Haunting Scream on Thundershot's side. Now, I talked to Rhino a little bit, and he said that he did not like this matchup. He thought that his matchup against Scream was really bad and was hoping to avoid it, and of course he's getting it as a round 1 pairing. Now, this list of Thundershot is a little bit bizarre in some respects, how it all pans out in the actual game. So we're not going to be able to watch this as it's happening. There'll be a number of the games that are happening in the background, but we'll be updating you on how it's all breaking down.
And then
so I believe...
So we're just getting ready, getting our players in the game for round 1, which is going to be Rekenner versus Linyvine, and we're just getting our hand cams up on there. So please just wait a moment while we get our players into the game.
So let me know if you can hear me. Just want to double check. We are going to be getting started very soon with Rek versus Linyvine, and so hopefully you will all be enjoying this, and it'll be a really sweet match.
Yeah, and back to our previous point before the we had a little bit of difficulty there. Rewind is playing Feln Scar, a powerful mid-range deck utilizing Champion of Cunning and Champion of Chaos. And Loco Pojo is running a Fire Time Justice Vault deck with the classic Loco Pojo Spice in a Claw of the First Dragon and an Infinite Hourglass.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Always some nice touches there on his behalf. We'll be talking more about the round 2 decks when we get up to that. But yes, we're going to be starting up very soon as the game is started, which I believe is beginning right now. So we should be able to cut into it, and we are going to be looking primary's perspective, and we'll see the hand cam for Linyvine up in the right corner. all working out properly. So we see a very slow draw for Feln control right now. I feel like that's a redraw.
Yeah, the
What do you
last
think?
word doesn't. Well, it is deadly and quick draw, so it instantly kills any unit attacks. It doesn't instantly kill any relic weapon attacks.
Yeah, and it's also not like Linyvine is playing a big unit strategy. Like it's the last word is really great against Combre, for instance, since you can just pick off their units one by one. But against something like Armory, where you're not really playing as many units, I don't think that this is an exciting hand for you.
Yeah. Linny, on the other hand, has a pretty solid hand here. It's got all of the types of influence he needs, a scheme if he needs to hunt for a fourth power, and a rise to the challenge to get him the most appropriate threat for the situation.
I also feel like Treasuring Gate seems useful in the matchup because you can just grind out the Felon control list by just generating value off of even like 3/2s and 4/1s or whatever. They just have to like kill them all one by one, which is going to be really frustrating.
Yeah, against a lot of decks, you don't have time to spend 4 power on a do-nothing relic, but against the super, super slow Felon control deck, you're not going to be punished for that.
But Rekenner definitely mulliganed into a much better hand.
So what do you think that he's going to be looking for with this rise to the challenge next turn?
This is always hard. We have an interesting decision here about whether Rekenner's going to backlash this. I'm not crazy about that because I feel like you would rather be trying to hit something like a Rise to the Challenge, although I guess that there aren't a lot of meaningful spells in his opponent's deck. But my default against something like Felon Control, you see your opponent's list is something really massive. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a Karia or sort of the Sky King or Daisho or something like this, but it's going to be, I think, one of those like major heavy hitters compared to something like if you were against Combre, where you would be much more interested in developing something like Auric Runehammer to just cleanly answer a some threat out of the Combre deck.
So Rek is rewarded for his patience here. He didn't play his Vara's favors to search for power on turn 3 or 4, and now he's going to get to use both of them here on turn 5 to destroy his opponent's Sword of Akari without losing any card advantage.
Yeah, which is definitely useful. No, I mean it is something that the way that the card advantage though works from the Armory side is a little bit bizarre because they have the smuggler stash that happens in the late game that kind of undoes all of this in the long run. Now it is something that it's fine for now. Rek is still in a good position in terms of card advantage, but I think that the longer the game goes, making these sorts of exchanges, it does actually favor Linyvine.
Yeah, especially with Rek's backlash gone, the onus is sort of on him to end the game here. I anticipate that he's going to Celestial Omen for a game-ending threat like Azendel's Gift or Vara here very soon.
Yeah, I definitely think that Gift is the one that I'm thinking about, especially since his opponent hasn't done very much. Like their hit, you imagine that their hand, probably has some interesting cards in it of some sort or another. So I feel like holding up. Going for the Staff of Stories. I'm
very, very
a little bit apprehensive.
He's just counting on Linny not having a relic weapon to attack it down instantly. And he doesn't have one that can do it in one shot. That Torch will be able to combine and do it.
Yeah, and I think that if you're on Linyvine's side, you're also pretty happy to just double torch it. There aren't a lot of great torch targets in your opponent's deck, so this is one that is a pretty clean exchange, and it doesn't allow Rek to generate that advantage train. Now, Linyvine, when he did cast the Rise to the Challenge and did find that Starsteel Daisho. Now,
Starsteel Daisho can attack twice a turn, so he's looking to jam 12 damage at him and end the game in 2 turns.
Oh yeah, this is a really aggressive play. And now I'm really split on this one because it's something that Starsteel Daisho, very aggressive card and allows you to end the game quickly, as you said. But at the same time, it is also vulnerable to things like Lightning Strike, which Rekenner has 2 copies of in his main deck.
Yeah, it's a very all or nothing play. He's going for the win right here.
Yeah, just not think that Rekenner has the material to deal with this threat. Now, I think that Rekenner is forced to Celestial Omen for something to deal with it, such as a Lightning Strike from his deck. So that this will all work out okay-ish, but it still could be much better.
Yeah, the way that the game worked out with Linny's hand being full of Rise to the Challenge and not threats, Celestial opening 4 Azendel's Gift and playing that on turn 7 would have worked out a little better for him.
Yeah.
But now he's going to try and salvage it with the Black Sky Harbinger, which we'll be able to trade with the weapon.
But see, I think that this is a little bit like you have to think that your opponent's hand is something like a relic weapon, because if they had Harsh Rule here, you're in a very bad spot.
He does have a Cabal Countess, though, which was an excellent draw, as that can
Yes, it is.
Ambush in at end of turn and attack down a relic weapon, or just intercept an attack and destroy it right away if your life total is low.
Linyvine picked up one of the most important cards in the matchup, and that is a copy of Smuggler's Stash. Now, this is a card that when you're firing it off for full value, and this is almost full value here, you're getting 2 weapons and 1 unit. It's devastating against these control decks like the one that Rekenner is playing.
Yeah, it's looking very grim. Very, very grim here.
Yeah, I would agree. So I feel as if, what does Rekenner do that actually survives here? Because he knows that he can take 12 damage from hand.
So he has to
I think that you
the Cabal Countess to intercept that Starsteel Dice Show.
So I feel as if the play is Death Strike the 6/4 and then hold up the Countess. I don't know what you could scheme for even that would really like get you out of the situation, because it's not even like you can hit something like a Withering Witch and do something with it. So he's going to do it all on his opponent's turn, which makes sense.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a line that gets him a victory here.
Yeah, he's just so far behind in both card advantage and in kind of card quality as well, and just is behind in life total in addition.
Here comes the Starsteel Dice Show.
Yeah, so we just dropped a perspective. Oh, it's coming back. So we have Rekenner. Last I saw was at 7. Oh, these ads are.
Okay. Sorry, guys. We dropped.
Okay, well, the game is done. We probably can guess who won. So we have.
Yeah, so what happened here is the Starsteel Dice Show came down, and Rek ambushed in Cabal Countess to destroy it, and then Death Strike the 6/4 Minotaur, taking 4 damage down to 6 health, and then he didn't draw an answer, and he conceded the game.
Makes sense. So what do we expect to be coming out of these sideboards?
Well, as we talked before in Rek's deck, he's going to bring in all the sabotages, all the lightning strikes, the recurring nightmares, probably even the Rain of Frogs. And he can cut all of his big unit removal spells. He doesn't need any Withering Witches because Armory doesn't play any big units. He doesn't need Death Strikes, really. He can shave on those because, again, no big units. Eye of Winter and Plague are also not going to be great cards. He just has to transform into an anti-weapon deck instead of an anti-unit deck like he is in game 1.
Well, so there's 2 questions here. One, how much do you keep in for dealing with Ikaria? Now, it's a 1-of in the deck, but with Rise to the Challenge, it multiplies the number of copies. And in addition, if you're in the Armory player's seat, you know that your opponent is probably taking out some unit removal, so your Ikarias are going to get better. Now, I mean, clearly things like Annihilate are just like awful. So that's definitely coming out. But you want to keep some number of Death Strikes in, I imagine, right?
Yeah, at least 2 or 3. It really depends on how many cards you have to shave.
Sure.
But yeah, removal spells like Annihilate and Permafrost will come out first.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And what do we see on the Armory side? We see 4 copies of Protect and 4 copies of Ruin, which are all great answers to Azendel's Gift. Now, I don't feel like we want to go quite that deep and bringing in all of these relics, all of these answers to one specific card in his opponent's deck. But that definitely seems like some mix of that will be coming in.
Yeah, Linny's deck is really well constructed for the matchup game 1. Minimal sideboarding, if any, is required here. You probably take out Torch just because Feln Control doesn't have any units that die to 3 damage. And you can put in Steward of the Past as just another unit to apply pressure, maybe a couple protects.
Yeah, I don't feel like there's... Yeah, protect seems like roughly the sort of thing that you would need. Like, allows you to, for instance, protect an Ikaria that's already attacked once. So there's lots of different tools that they have at their disposal over here. So I don't feel as if the matchup swings dramatically in Felon Control's favor after sideboard, because this is just a really rough matchup for them.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be super favored or anything, but it won't be just a slaughter like game 1 is.
Oh, you think
Recurring Nightmare in particular is very difficult for it to deal with, and Linny has to actually keep in some torches for that. If he doesn't pay close attention, he might just get punked out of the game there.
Interesting. See, the thing for me there is that I often feel as if Recurring a Nightmare is too slow. Maybe it's just something that I have a bias against the card in ranked play, because I've just seen it be so slow and so clunky in some games. But maybe it's better here than I'm giving it credit for.
Well, it's so good because it's a recurring way to destroy relic weapons. Once you get in 1 or 2 attacks so that it has enough strength to destroy a relic weapon's armor in 1 hit, then it becomes very, very, very dangerous. And Linny can never spend all of his power. He always has to leave up 1 for a torch. Otherwise, any weapon he play will be destroyed after 1 attack.
Sure. Okay, so we're just going to be waiting from our players to see how they're sideboarding, and then get into the game as soon as we are able. Are we good? We are going to be getting into a game very soon. Pumped for game 2. I still am feeling as if the Armory deck is favored here, but maybe Recurring Nightmare will teach me a lesson.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe he'll live up to his name and be a nightmare for Armory.
Oh yeah. Indeed.
It's also impossible to understate just how important Lightning Strike is. It's definitely the only way to cheaply interact with relic weapons.
Yeah, that's definitely a big upgrade. Okay, so we see out of Rekenner here, hand of 2 Sabotage, 2 Death Strike. I feel like that's a little bit too slow.
So it's a very classic conflict. You have 2 cards that are great and 2 cards that are bad.
Oh, he's going to be keeping. Okay, and then from Lily, if Rekenner also kept a very suspect hand for me. I actually really do not like the keep on the other side, because Harsh Rule is not really the sort of tool that you want to have. I mean, I guess the power in Armory is bad enough that you're kind of willing to keep any hand that functions, but I'm not sure.
Well, this is a great pickup for Rek. A Wisdom of the Elders will fix most problems when it comes to having a poor hand.
Yes, indeed it will.
And he fires off a Sabotage, but doesn't find a relic weapon and is forced to settle for just taking a Harsh Rule, which I wouldn't even be sad about losing from the Armory side.
Yeah, me too. I would make that exchange all day long. Now, I'm one of the things that I've mentioned before in previous casts is the idea of timing sabotages, and I feel as if in some matchups people sometimes play them out a little bit too aggressively, because they're just like, oh, I just have the power right now. Now, this is a matchup that up until like the mid to late game, you're going to have access to extra power. So I feel like you're going to have a better shot to sabotage something really useful. See, it's okay. Here you're getting a Rise the Challenge, which is much better.
The turn before your opponent's cards you're scared of come down, like turn 4 for Rise the Challenge. Yeah, that was well played by Rek.
Yeah, that was much better timing. I like that timing much more.
And now he's poised to start putting on some pressure of his own with the Steward of the Past here. The effect of silencing the opponent's Void doesn't do a whole lot, because the weapons are the important part to get back with Smuggler's Stash, not the units. Yeah. But the 3/5 body is a solid attacker and doesn't get killed by many relic weapons.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of state exactly how important that 3/5 body is, because it is something that, especially Auric Runehammer, but also Torch and sort of Ikaria are all poorly positioned in terms of the sizing. Now, with that Artisan bonus that we saw on the previous turn, interesting chump here. I'm kind of surprised by that on Linyvine's side.
I guess he supposes that all of his units are pretty small and useless, and he just wants to cash it in for 3 life.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe he's seeing something different in the matchup than I am, but I'm kind of surprised by that that play. Maybe he's planning to harsh rule this away this turn and just wanted to save the 3 health for that reason.
That would make sense. Yeah, he's trying to squeeze some extra value out of his harsh rule, but he doesn't pull the trigger, and he's actually gonna be under some pretty big pressure pretty soon here when this Cabal Countess ambushes in at the end of his turn, and then his harsh rule gets backlashed.
Yeah. So okay, so yeah, no play. We have Cabal Countess. I love this card. This is a spectacular addition to the game, in my opinion, of Countess. How has she been for you?
Oh, she is amazing. She does it all. She can be used as a lightning strike against ground units just by ambushing in and blocking them. She can ambush in end of turn after your board gets harsh ruled. She can even go in and stall boards and attack very well thanks to 6 power and quick draw. Just an amazing card.
So that was a back-breaking backlash, and we are going to be going on to game.
Wow, he just concedes on the spot. He wasn't even dead on the board.
He was just frustrated, I think, with how he played that game, maybe. I'm not sure. But that was definitely a very convincing game on Rekenner's, on a Linyvine side. Now, one of the things there that I think is pertinent to mention, so he chumped away that Artisan early on in the game, and it would have much better served at chumping against the Countess, but we're going to be jumping right into game 3.
Right
seeing
back
some
at
opening
it.
hands.
No sideboarding adjustments here.
Yeah, just ready to rock and roll. Okay, so I'm looking at Linyvine's hand, and that looks pretty solid. A lot of swords to get things started. All your different faction requirements, but I mean not quite. But you have a good start to them, and you also are most of the way with Death Strike that can take care of a Countess or something else that's pesky.
Yeah, that's definitely a good start. The Sword of Ikaria is the best early game pressure that he has, and then even as a Death Strike in case Rek puts up a unit to block, like Feln Bloodcaster, for example. But he's going to have to mulligan this hand away as it only has 1 power.
Yeah, the Rekenner's definitely going to have to mulligan this one away. See what they get into. I hope that he's not considering this. I'm surprised that it's taking this long to redraw.
So he's on
but we'll see what's happening.
And has Avara's favor and a lot of good cards. So maybe he's hoping that he draws a power in his first 2 draws, and then he can just be off to the races.
Feeling lucky, as it were. That actually is a consideration. I would have been surprised still, but yeah, this hand is kind of mopey that he ended up with. Like, I'm surprised that he still has all these lightning storms in his deck, actually.
Well, you need to leave in a couple lightning storms to combo with Withering Witches to destroy units, but I'm not sure how many Withering Witches he even left in his deck. Well, and again, Wisdom of the Elders bails them out.
Yeah, that's a great card for those purposes. Now, one of the challenges on the opponent's side, on the Armory side, is actually sort of Ikaria flooded, which is an okay problem to have, but it is a problem still, because it means that you can only develop one of these at a time. You can't. It's not like you can have 2 or 3 swords, in play at the same time. So it's going to be a little bit awkward on Linyvine's side, but I think that he'll still be able to make the pressure function.
Yeah, and if you have a sword in play against a unit light deck, you're winning the game. And it's not hurting you to have more in hand. Although what is hurting him is that he did not draw a 4th power. So he's constrained on what he can do right now.
Yeah, I definitely would love to be able to fire off this Rise right now, even though it would be going into the opponent's backlash, which would be kind of unfortunate. But still, that would be the exact sort of play that he would be interested in right now.
And Rek is holding up backlash rather than cast his scheme.
Yes, which I think is a reasonable play. Like, 'cause you can beat a sort of Ikaria. I mean, you're going to be taking a few hits. That's not fun, but this is a card that you can beat given enough time. Ooh, so we see that Recurring Nightmare come out and we'll be putting some pressure on that weapon.
I think it's time.
Yes, I think it's time too. And going to be able to keep up that backlash the entire time. I feel like that backlash is going to be important in this game.
Yeah, Linny, his 4th power was depleted, but now he does have access to all of those Death Strikes in his hand, which are good answers to Recurring Nightmare. But spending his whole turn only to have his Death Strike backlashed, which will then destroy his weapon thanks to the 2 damage from backlash, is going to be quite punishing.
It will be. It will be. This is going to be a pretty rough turn on Linyvine's side. But at the same time, like, Rekenner is getting low. Like, after the next attack with the sort of a caveat. Rekenner's going down to 8.
But this is like we were talking about. Well, we were in the sideboarding segment. Recurring Nightmare is going to be able to destroy that weapon, and oh my goodness, he draws
maybe not so much anymore.
Hammer charged up with all those war cries.
Okay, so Rekka has the opportunity to play out both of his units and attack down the Auric Runehammer. Now, it's not going to be completely dead. Still will have 1 health on it left, but that will allow Linyvine to Death Strike the Bloodcaster that will be developed and then attack for lethal.
Yeah,
so Rekka, in order to survive, is going to have to keep the Nightmare on the board.
Oh, and he attacks with it. This is going to be game.
Yeah, this
Linny is going to Death Strike the Feln Bloodcaster and off with Auric Runehammer.
I am surprised by the number of Death Strikes that Linyvine kept in his deck, but apparently they worked out.
Yeah, it was looking pretty grim for him for a moment there, facing down an ever-growing Recurring Nightmare. But then he drew that War-Cried Auric Runehammer with 4 War-Cry triggers on it.
And if he didn't have that many like triggers on it, it would have died to the attack of the Nightmares. So it would have made a pretty big difference. Actually, it wouldn't have made that. Yeah, it would have been a pretty big difference because it wouldn't have been able to attack and Death Strike that same turn. Those Warcry triggers just really add up, and you really notice a lot of games.
That just goes to show how brutal Warcry is. If you can get a bunch of Warcries going in the early game, it quickly snowballs out of control, especially with relic weapons that can get more armor that way.
So we have a winner for round 1 of our coverage, and that, of course, is Linyvine. What is it again? I can't remember.
Linyvine.
Linyvine. I'm just very dumb today. Unlike any other day. But we're going to be getting a update from our producer as to what is happening with next round and what to be looking forward to and when we're going to be going on a break. But maybe take a look at the brackets that we have here. So that means that they'll be playing against Crispa next. What's Crispa playing?
Crispa is running another Feln control deck, so he's really getting the opportunity to run the gauntlet here.
Oh yeah, that'll be good. I'm sure for Linyvine. They are so somebody in chat is asking where deck lists are posted. Maybe our producer, when he gets a chance, can link them in there for everybody to be able to see. They're in the chat earlier. Yeah, we can see the deck list earlier, linked in chat. I will relink them again, for I am an all-powerful mod.
We appreciate you, Neon.
Rewind takes it 2-1 over Locopojo is another result that just came in.
So it's Felnscar over Firetime Justice Vault. I'm very interested to see how these Vault decks go. There are 3 different ones in the tournament, and all 3 are using different faction combinations. So they all have time for the Vault itself and fire for its cards that produce multiple units. But then Toth is splashing Primal for Shimmer Pack. Sir Rhino is splashing Shadow, and Locopojo is splashing Time, or Justice, rather.
Just the whole gambit. So I'm definitely really interested to see how these Vault decks perform. And I also would be interested in some commentary from the players as to why they've chosen to come here with Vault decks. Because, there's only so much time that you have to test with a card like Vault. So they must be pretty confident in its power in order to bring it to a tournament like this.
Yeah, it's a very interesting card. If you can afford the tempo loss of playing a 4-power card that does nothing the turn you play it, it gives you tons and tons of resilience against control decks, because most turns you're going to be drawing 2 cards. Your draw for the turn, and then your draw Vault when you play a second unit. And then all of your units are small and very resilient against spot removal. So any Death Strike, Annihilate, Suffocate base deck is going to have a very hard time against these Vault decks.
Indeed.